Hello, and 93. I want to talk about psychiatry and specifically the literary censorship of mental patients. First of all, I should say that I'm not for or against psychiatry in general, because every psychiatrist is different and every psychiatric hospital is different. And although I could talk about psychiatry at length, I'm not going to here. I want to focus on this issue, this grassroots human rights issue, because I'm really quite angry about things that have happened to me in the past, where I haven't been allowed literature that I consider to be religious literature. Now, my religion is Thelema, a belief system initiated by the notorious Aleister Crowley. Now, although Crowley is no longer considered to be the axis of evil itself, I found that he was not well liked by the psychiatric staff that I found myself surrounded by. I was told that I was not allowed full access to Crowley's books because variously that it contained references to blood sacrifice, that it was general and disturbing in general, and that they did not want other patients to be influenced by it. And even worse, I was not allowed to have my own writings about Thelema, even though these writings have since been published. I mean, this is fair enough from one perspective, but they should at least have allowed me some of Crowley's writings, because they are not all of Crowley's books are completely in the genre of macabre Victorian literature. But it seems that Crowley's name is maligned by people in general, then all of his books are tarred with the same brush, and by the same psychology, all so-called occult books are denied to certain mental patients. But the reality is that Crowley's books are not actually occult by the strict definition of the word, which actually just means hidden. In reality, the occult books in mental institutions are the mental health records that keep detailed records on each individual patient. These are the real occult books because they keep tabs on people, and the people detailed in these files are not in every case allowed to read these notes. And before 1991, a psychiatrist was not allowed to show our patients these notes even if he wanted to. By this standard, you cannot call Crowley's writings occult, especially when these books have been publicly available for between 50 to 100 years. From my perspective, I am quite afraid that if I become unwell again, I do not want to be locked up in a mental home without being allowed to read what I want. Now, you could say that certain books are a bad influence, but the reality is that the pervasive bad influence in mental homes are the other patients, who are frequently uninhibited and outspoken in the worst possible way. So I suppose if I was allowed to have Crowley's poetry in my room, it would end up as a choice between being badly influenced by a book or being badly influenced by a group of patients. Now, we have to remember that psychiatry is not an annex to society, it's not hidden from society, it is a part of society. Psychiatric treatments are a reflection of societal norms, and more often than not, psychiatrists simply reinforce the status quo of what society wants for its rejects, for want of a better term. So if we find censorship of literature within mental health wards, we may eventually find this infringement of liberty occurring in everyday society. And although the Mental Health Act, the Mental Health Act 1983, is comprehensive and has its safeguards built in, to my knowledge there are no definitive guidelines about what patients should be allowed to read. Psychiatric censorship originates from the level of each individual ward. So for most of us, it's just a matter of potluck. I doubt very much that the government will lay down new guidelines about it. So because of this, people should use the internet to highlight this problem. But my real personal problem is that I was not allowed to have religious literature. And although Crowley is not considered a prophet by most people, I myself consider him to be a prophet. I would just like to hear from anyone who has had books or magazines, etc., confiscated on the basis of mental health. I am very anxious that modern psychiatry stays objective and tailored towards the individual and towards individual sovereignty, and that one of the fundamental freedoms to read literature already available in high street bookstores remains or is reinstated. I suppose I could sum up this short video by saying that psychiatry and psychopolitics should be distinct in this country, so that the system helps people in genuine need and does not enforce a covert agenda. I'm speaking now more in reference to Thelema than a critique or an endorsement of psychiatry, because Thelema is much more important to me than a bunch of doctors. I just want to make sure that if I'm ever detained again, that I'll be allowed to go to the high street on leave, buy a book, and actually be allowed to read it on the ward. Thanks for listening. Ciao for now, and 93.